Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. We're very excited to bring you the results of this year's email marketing industry census in collaboration with eConsultancy. We have such great insight to share with you this afternoon, so do stay tuned. Before we start, the normal housekeeping rules that you're used to. So we're not able to hear you, but please do submit questions using the questions panel in the sidebar. You can also write us on Twitter at Adestra and at eConsultancy and ask questions, and we'll be following those as well and live tweeting snippets of insight. The recording and the slides will be sent in a follow-up email, so please do feel free to share them with your colleagues and share all the things you'll be learning today. But I know you haven't come here to hear me, so I'm joined today by Jennifer Watkis and Andrew Warren Payne. Jen is our head of marketing here at Adestra. She's an integrated communications specialist with over 10 years of demonstrated experience in generating creative marketing programs that deliver solid bottom line results. And she loves things like the census. And Andrew is an analyst at eConsultancy, where he works on producing research, reports, and best practice guidance for the digital marketing industry. He's been conducting industry surveys since 2011, including earlier versions of the census, and has also served in head of marketing and product roles within B2B business information companies. You'll hear me at some point during the presentation taking questions, but apart from that, I'll hand it over to Jen.
Hi everyone, and thanks Anka. So moving on quickly, I will get the price of admission out of the way. You have to listen to me talk for a minute about Adestra. If you're not already familiar, we are an email marketing provider. For over a decade, we've been empowering marketers to achieve their goals and maximize their ROI. We were founded on the principle that marketing success takes more than technology, which is why customer service is at the heart of our business. And we've won multiple awards for that service, because we're not just software as a service, we're software and a service. Of course, we have proven success across multiple industries, including those that feature heavily in the census. And we are also the pioneers of first-person marketing, which means really going beyond not only batch and blast, but even going beyond basic personalization and segmentation to deliver emails that delight your subscribers and give you and your companies the best possible email results. So really, it's more than ticking boxes for different tactics and getting different pieces of marketing kit. It's using all of your data and all of your technology available to deliver really key results and give communications that are not only what you want to make sure your customers hear, but what they are really expecting and anticipating from you and what they really need. So we'll speak about a number of key email marketing practices in the census review today. And my challenge to you during this webinar will be to stop thinking of them in silos and really start thinking about how you can make all of your technologies and strategies that you know work in concert to deliver campaigns that don't just focus on one aspect of your communications, but really focus in on putting your customers first. So I will also be sharing some examples along the way from our clients who are well on their way to doing this. So here are the pictures of the fine people you'll be hearing from today, and myself and Andrew. We're really excited to be working again with eConsultancy on this census. It delivers such valuable insight for email marketers across various industry segments on what's working, what everyone's focused on, and where the opportunities lie. And with that, I am going to give control over to Andrew, and he's going to take you through the results.
Great, thanks for that, Jen, and thanks for the kind words, Anka, for the introduction. It's great to be here and share with you, the audience, the results of the email marketing industry census. Great. Okay, so for those that don't know about the census, eConsultancy has partnered with Adestra since 2007 to produce a report which sheds light on the trends, tactics, and challenges of email marketing. And it's now in its 11th year. We published it just recently this month, And having such historical data puts us in a unique position to analyse email marketing trends. For this report, there were 1,200 respondents exactly to our research request, and this took the form of an online survey in February and March of this year. And respondents included both companies or in-house marketers, and they comprised around 68% of the sample, and also supply-side respondents such as agencies, consultants, and vendors, who made up the rest of the sample, so 32%. So what will we be covering today? Well, first I'm going to give you a bit of information about the wider context of email marketing and its importance, because it's very much a critical channel for those looking to be effective with marketing, and despite its age, it still shows its relevance in the light of changing consumer behaviour. Following that, I'll cover automation and ROI, and the good news here is that marketers are looking at driving efficiencies at scale better than ever before, although there remains significant room for improvement in some areas. Next, I'll touch on devices and optimization. We're now a long way past the world of just purely desktop and web-based email, and as a result, marketers need to adapt to these changing expectations and behaviors from their customers and prospects. Personalization is another key area which I'll also cover, in particular the challenges and barriers that marketers are facing when it comes to developing those first-person experiences. And finally, we'll give a look to the future, including areas of data privacy, team dynamics, and what artificial intelligence may hold for the future of marketing. The report goes into a lot more detail than what we're able to cover in today's session, and so I'd recommend downloading a copy from Adestra to explore the results further. I'm sure Adestra and also myself will be happy to discuss any of those findings with you. So before we begin, I think it would be good to get a view of what you're doing as an audience and what your challenges are. So just shortly you'll see a poll which you should see on your screen. That's going to ask you about what your biggest challenge with email marketing is. And I want to go and get your view on that before we begin. Because it'd be interesting to see whether the audience matches some of the responses we saw in the census. And also, just when it comes to the Q&A, we can tailor the responses accordingly. I'm starting to see the responses coming through now. I think we've almost got about half of you that have voted. So for the rest, just click on your selection, what your biggest challenge is, and press the submit button, and we'll get the results shortly. Right, so we've got most people now. I think we're going to close the poll. Great, and having a look here, we have the top challenge with time to do it properly with 37%, followed by data quality and lack of budget and staff. And this is slightly different to the results of the survey, where we had lack of budget and staff, so those resources as being the top challenge, followed by time. But data quality came up as another issue, particularly within the context of personalization, and I'll be covering that in the later sections to follow. So that's an interesting stat which we'll touch on in the rest of the webinar. So before we start, I think it would be useful to sort of provide the context in which email marketing is sitting today. And I think the first point to ask is, I think there's this perception, mostly with regards to marketers that don't use email or aren't involved in it, that email might be a bit old-fashioned, particularly given the sort of first networked email was sent by Ray Tomlinson, who invented the @ symbol back in 1971. And webmail services such as Hotmail have been around since the mid-90s. So with the emergence of newer tech for consumers and digital marketers alike, as I mentioned, it may seem as the old channel, which risks it being seen as somewhat of an afterthought. But treating email in this way would be a big mistake. And these are just some stats here that we've got from other third-party sort of research pieces around the internet. And a phrase that we've used repeatedly at eConsultancy is that email remains the workhorse of digital marketing, and that it's only becoming more significant as time goes on. And the stats you see on the screen come from a variety of research studies. So Radicati Group reports that they expect there to be 2.9 billion users of email by 2019, so equivalent to a third of the world's population, and they'll be receiving 246 billion emails during that time. The other stat comes from the DMA, and they asked some consumers which of these types of subjects would you agree are being best served by email. And actually, email came out as the best channel for receiving information, which I think is a positive sign. And then a slightly more humorous stat actually came from another vendor, and they found that 42% of consumers check email in the bathroom. And I will put my hand up and admit, yes, I have checked my email in the bathroom on the way to the shower in the morning. And so the reality is that people are incorporating email into their new patterns of behavior. So as new devices come along, whether it's that's mobile or even wearable, such as the Apple Watch, which I check my email on, email adapts to changing behaviors. And so marketers can't forget about email and need to keep up with the times. So the first section I'm going to cover is around automation and ROI. And we're going to find out, well, how are marketers adapting? Well, email offers a fantastic opportunity to reach customers efficiently and at scale, which is why automation and ROI was a key area of focus for the study. And in previous studies, some years back, a message that we stressed was that marketers need to move away from the traditional batch and blast behaviors which we have historically seen. And that happened because A, it's easy to do, and B, to a certain extent, batch and blast was still somewhat effective. But what we're glad to report is that we've seen that this behavior is changing. And the first stat I'll share with you is that we found that 67% of marketers reported success in implementing automated email. And this is up by 5 percentage points from last year. And I think this is great news, as automation makes marketers more efficient, and it also facilitates improved personalized customer experiences, which means that your customers that are receiving your email are going to find it more useful, they're going to engage with it, and ultimately those email marketers that are getting involved with automated email are going to be seeing better results. And on that note of automation, when we asked marketers what the most important attributes of an email technology provider were, it was no surprise that marketing automation capability came out on top this year as the most important feature for ESPs, with 66% citing this as one of the most important attributes. And this was followed by having a user-friendly interface at 60%, and the ability to integrate with other marketing technology at 37%. So again, I think this just reflects that previously where obviously a user-friendly interface is important, but marketers are looking to do more with email, and they're getting ahead with the times. And such on ROI, there's also good news, and this is actually the same percentage as last year, which is that 73% of marketers report that email marketing offers an excellent or good ROI. And I think this shows two things. One, as I've said already, email as a channel has kept up with changing consumer behavior. And second, I think it just stresses the point that email is an excellent conversion or retention channel, because once you've got someone's email address and you can engage with them, you have that potential for that long-term customer relationship with them over time. And on the note of ROI, one thing I'd sort of like to stress is that email marketing has been consistently one of the top 2 channels for return on investment ever since we've asked this question as being part of the study. And the only other thing it seems to swap places with from time to time is SEO. So I think this just highlights the fact that email is important, and it needs to be one of the channels that you incorporate within the rest of your marketing activity. But that being said, and with the sort of the positive news I've sort of shared from the research, it could be argued that companies have been chronically underinvesting in email as a channel. And this chart shows the consistent picture that we've seen over the years, highlighting the gap between the average proportion of sales, which is that top line in red, and that's the average proportion of sales attributed to email marketing, versus the average proportion of total marketing budgets that are spent on email. And this year, we saw that while 22% of sales came from email, this was with just 15% of budget. And one could argue that this is the case because email offers a good ROI, so therefore the proportion of spend would be lower. But one thing I'd like to sort of highlight that against is that what the obvious returns that we have seen for brands that have a more mature email strategy and are investing more. So this chart shows actually it's a cross-tabulation, which means that we've compared two questions against each other. And what we found is that when marketers put more time, money, and effort into email, they're more likely to report an excellent ROI, which suggests there's a multiplier effect in place. So what we see here is that while 38% of marketers who carried out advanced segmentation reported excellent ROI, just 19% of those that didn't had a similar level of success. And likewise, those folks who weren't doing advanced segmentation were actually much more likely to see or to report an average or poor ROI. So this is just one example of where spending extra sort of time and money on email marketing has this multiplier effect, and your return on investment will be higher. Another analysis that we saw in the study was that marketers who spend at least 10% of their budget on email were twice as likely to report an excellent ROI than those who didn't spend up to that percentage. And I think this follows on to another point, which means that there may be a missed opportunity for optimization. So we asked about a lot of practices in the report, and the ones you'll see here are like content personalization, location-based content, and more. And for these more advanced tactics, we found that no more than a third of marketers were engaging in these. So I think what this stresses is that while progress is being made, perhaps there's more ground that email marketers need to cover in terms of generating ROI and getting all they can out of the email channel. And Jen, I think you have some comments to say with regards to automation as well.
I do. So I wanted to share an example of one of my favorite client examples of automation here. It's with the NSPCC. And what they have done is go beyond just thinking, what can I automate as a one-off? They have really put their customer and their subscriber journey at the forefront when planning this and optimize their entire customer journey in order to make their email marketing as effective as possible. So they have gone beyond single tactics and moved towards automating not only the content in their emails using XML feeds, but they've automated the program of emails that subscribers get to increase the overall level of engagement, so they're sending the right content at the right time to the right people, and really closing that loop as well to recapture donations, because their mission is being the leading children's charity in the UK to specialize in child protection. They're dedicated to the fight for every childhood. So what they really want to do is make sure that they're raising money from their supporters in order to continue to fulfill their mission. So they are absolutely certain on who they are and what they need to do to be successful. They know what is meaningful and engaging to their supporters who want to help them fulfill that mission. And through the entire journey, they've managed to increase the engagement with their supporters and recapture an average £38 donation for every abandoned basket process. So they've gone into some traditional retail tactics as well, looking beyond just the charitable sector and using additional features and functionality to really add to their mix, and again, make all those marketing pieces work in concert to really move forward. And they've used automation in a very purposeful way to improve that supporter experience and ultimately be better able to fulfill their mission. So I love that example of just thinking about automation in not how can I save myself time, but how can I really use it to enhance that subscriber experience and make the business more successful.
Great. Thank you, Jen. So yeah, now we're going to cover another area of the study, which is devices. And it's now been 10 years since the launch of the iPhone, 7 since the launch of the iPad and Samsung's Galaxy Tab. And now we really can't say that desktop or web-based email experiences are the default channel. One only has to look at other studies on consumer behavior, such as Ofcom's Communications Market Report. And this shows that now, in those 10 years, we now have a situation where 71% of consumers own a smartphone and 59% own a tablet. And as such, we need to realize that optimizing for different devices must be business as usual. And this stat that we have here highlights the good news on this front, which is that the majority, so nearly 3/4 at 73%, are practicing mobile optimization, so optimizing for different devices. And this is being a jump from 64% last year, which represents the most significant year-on-year rise in adopted practices for email marketing. And within this optimization, there's a growing adoption of a range of practices. So for example, 2/3 of those who optimize have created a responsive email template, with 59% having adapted their email design to a simpler template that renders well across devices. That being said, marketers can't just rest on their laurels, and they need to make sure that they know their audience through data and prioritize accordingly. And this is crucial in terms of putting the customer first. So as an example, if you happen to work for a B2B company where 90% of your list opens their email and Outlook, things are going to be very different for you compared to, say, a B2C youth fashion brand where the majority of opens will be, say, occurring on iOS Mail or Gmail on Android. And so I think from this, I think it's worth bearing in mind that no size fits all, and one has to figure out a way to make prioritization relative to your audience and to your customers. But despite this, there are barriers that get in the way of this optimization ideal. And not surprisingly, it comes down to either money or time. And 26% cited this lack of resources in either budget or staff as the main barrier to device optimization, and 17% doing time. And I know for those on the webinar today, a larger response said that they were lacking the time to do it properly. So I think hopefully this is something we can address in the Q&A later on. And on this note of time, for those 37%, a poignant quote comes from one of the experts cited in the report, Tim Watson from Zetasphere. And he says that given the fact that there are low-cost email build services, it just doesn't pay to try and do device optimization yourself. Your time is too precious. And I think that's worth bearing in mind when it comes to figuring out how you can adapt to these different devices and improve the way your email is received by your audience. And I think, Jen, this is where you have sort of an Adestra case study on this.
Yeah, another client example on this for you is with Crabtree and Evelyn. So they did what we call designing for the subscriber. They didn't approach their email saying we want a mobile template. They really took a look at who was opening their emails and how and in which device, and they found out that 78% of their subscribers were opening email on mobile devices and in email clients that were blocking images. So they really focused on making their email a great experience for those subscribers, which is the vast majority. And as a lifestyle brand, especially in the age of Instagram and really beautiful images, they knew that that also still had to be a well-designed and very beautiful image-centric experience. So what they've done is they have really moved from what you see in the before screen, which was in a web client with images turned off, just some basic blocks of color and absolutely no content. And then in the mobile version, just a shrunken version of really a desktop client, which ends up having tiny links, small text. It's nice, but it's not great. And then you move to the after version, where even if images are turned off, there's a very compelling offer that's showing up in text and really inspires the subscriber to engage with that email. And then the mobile version is responsive to the device, so it's shifting things around. So the call to action is very clear, that it's very design forward, still very attractive, and the information is there. So this resulted in much higher open rates, much higher engagement rates with their email. They happen to contract with our digital design team to do this, but I would encourage anyone to definitely heed Tim Watson's advice. There are loads of great agencies now focused on design. Your ESP may have professional services teams to help you, but absolutely make the investment. Customers and consumers are expecting this now. It's becoming business as usual to give them a good experience that they're expecting. They will just delete your email and move on otherwise. So absolutely move forward on that.
Great, thank you, Jen. And I think that example there just really paints a picture immediately of what those changes can make. So, and I think that leads us nicely onto the topic of personalization, which is the other area of focus in our study. Now, much research, not just from eConsultancy, but other providers and research companies on the web have shown that the most effective email is always going to be that is personalized and therefore more likely to be relevant and timely to the recipient. And just to quote some examples from other pieces of research that I saw around the web, I found that personalized email messages improve click-through rates. So Aberdeen Group says that they improved CTRs by an average of 14% and conversion by 10%. We have ourselves at eConsultancy, we found that 74% of marketers say that targeted personalization increases their customer engagement. But we also found that some online retailers were not kind of engaging in as much. But what did people say for our study? Well, I think one theme that came out is that when we asked what the most important area of focus was, it was personalization. So when we gave respondents just one option to select for what they needed to focus on the year ahead, this is the topic that came out on top. But that being said, we also found that most are still in the earlier stages of personalization. And while there has been a near doubling of those who send email based on individual activities and preferences at scale, from 8 to 15%, as you can see in the chart here, you can see that 62% are either in the early stages or are not yet working on personalized email campaigns. So despite this focus and the realization from marketers that they need to get ahead, many are still behind. And this again comes back to the point about missed opportunities, which is something I touched on earlier. And again, that email is particularly prone to, given the fact that it generally has a good ROI, even when not done perfectly. And Catpay, another expert cited in the report, highlights what the future will be when marketers do get their act together and start improving personalization. She says that I can only see the ROI increasing even higher once we embrace advanced personalization tactics and lifecycle marketing programs and optimize them on a continuous basis to ensure we're achieving the best results possible. So I think the future is bright once we see that movement, and based on what we saw with regards to automation, I think it will happen in the years to follow. So why are marketers behind? Well, when we asked what the main challenges were to implement more email personalization, the biggest issue by far was that of integrating data, with 55% of respondents citing this as one of their main challenges in email marketing. And for you here on the webinar today, 29% listed data quality, of which integration is a part, as a big challenge that you're facing. And data will always be at the heart of first-person marketing. And so it's easy to see why this is the case, particularly when it comes to cross-channel customer activities where you want to get information from your customers from sources other than email. And this theme of data and by connection CRM, which you can also see on the word cloud here, also came up when we asked marketers to elaborate on their specific challenges that they're facing when trying to personalize their email marketing. And just a selection of quotes that we have here from the text that made up the word cloud. We have one on the top left who described the major hurdle that delays the shift towards personalization is the cost of omnichannel data collection, integration, and segmentation. Another respondent highlighted aligning the data as well as having accurate and complete data to work with in the first place. Time again came up as an issue, and of course multiple databases, none of which may not necessarily integrate with email automatically. So, I mean, what could be the solution? And, you know, we've seen a lot of providers on the market offering marketing clouds or marketers assembling their own solutions in the form of stacks. Jen, what's your view on this? How can marketers improve in this area?
Sure. Well, first, I'd love to know, if we launch the next poll, who is responsible for technology stacks within your organization, specifically thinking about all of the marketing technologies you use, who's managing these for you, and how much involvement have you got? So results are coming in fast and furious. We'll leave it for another little bit. And if we see the results, it looks like it's some fairly solid thirds between marketing, a specific digital team, or an IT team with a few agency partners and a few others rounding out the group. It's not surprising. There are many options for managing your marketing technology, and I can speak from our experience that we're seeing a lot more demand for integration with different marketing technologies over the past couple of years. The marketing clouds have absolutely been banking on the importance of integrated systems by buying up point solutions and selling them as a bundle. The actual experience when you get in there varies depending on cloud provider. Folks like Scott Brinker, one of my favorite marketing bloggers and marketing thought leaders at chiefmartech.com, has pioneered the stackies in the last couple of years to highlight different marketing stacks and the different technologies that marketers are using. And I really want to stress that marketers who are using technology tools need to start thinking of themselves more as technologists, or at least become quite comfortable working with the technologists. We're all in a data-driven world, in a technology-empowered world, so it's going to be increasingly important to think beyond the creativity and the psychology of marketing to the technological delivery in order to really drive this forward and drive forward the advantages of this. We can't keep waiting for someone else to solve the tech problems, so I hope that your digital and IT teams are working closely with you in order to enable you and empower you to use your technology to its fullest extent. And I'll share another client example. One of our clients who has really doubled down on making sure they're able to deliver a very personalized experience through their emails is Naked Wines. Now, their entire business is based on the idea that your wine delivery, or you should be drinking wines that are really personalized to your taste. So if you're not one of their wine angels or familiar with them, they're an online wine retailer working on a subscription basis. They operate in the UK, the US, and in Australia. And their customers fund independent winemakers from around the world. So you pay your monthly subscription, and Naked Wines takes that to go out and find undiscovered or underrated winemakers throughout the world and bring that back to what they call their wine angels and give them exclusive access to this wine at a wholesale price. And so a big part of that membership is rating those wines and telling them what you like to drink and which of the wines that they're bringing to market you prefer over others. So the angels have come to expect really highly personalized wine recommendations as a result of these purchases and ratings. And so in order to provide this experience at scale, Naked Wines really needed to incorporate all of that data back into their emails when they're informing their angels what's coming up and trying to, of course, sell more wine to them. So it's a really highly complex use of data and systems integrations and technology, but it results in such a fantastic program. They have an XML feed where the recommendations that their algorithm has come up with delivers up to 5 unique wines with a percentage of certainty based on what that particular subscriber has selected. So they have conditional email content saying, here are the wines that we think you will like. It's based on personalization, some calls to action in terms of their inventory available and what's coming out soon, product images, product names, the list price, the angel's price, any savings. That all is dynamically generated in the email. It is such a personalized experience. It's, I believe, something everyone should strive for. It's obviously possible. I'm showing it to you now. If you're really focused on delivering that super personalized, super interactive experience of what your subscribers are really looking to hear from you. So this has delivered a 40% conversion rate for Naked Wines, which is phenomenal for any email program. They've had increases in website conversions, in total conversions of their orders, nearly 10% uplift per customer. One of my absolute favorite programs. I share it every chance I get. Such a good idea. So, oh yes, here's the other email kind of scrolling through. Got excited and forgot to show you the second animation. But yeah, I'll pass it back to Andrew after that example, and we'll talk about all the other exciting things you can do with your email.
Great, thanks. I think seeing that email makes me think it's Friday already and off to happy hour. But yeah, it's a fantastic campaign and just showing what you can do when you have that data and you can use it to drive personalization. So what does the future hold? We're now kind of coming up to our last section of the webinar, and we're going to cover some questions we asked with regards to future trends, those that are closest to the present and those that may be a little bit further away. So of course, Brexit has been an issue across all business globally, along with the wider ramifications. But for email marketers, does it change things? Well, the reality, when it comes to the law, little can change, at least in the short term. And this is either because, businesses who are selling or marketing to folks in the EU have to comply with EU law, which means they have to follow the various regulations and directives that come across. And also in the UK specifically, much of the law will still stand, including the upcoming General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, which seeks to unify the various previous approaches under the e-privacy directive. So this was a question we asked email marketers about, and we asked them, to what extent will recent EU data law changes impact your approach to email? And so from our survey, we see that there has been an increase in the proportion of marketers who are reviewing their practices in the light of this upcoming regulation, from 29% last year to 38% today. And I think this is especially important given the severity of penalties. So within the regulation, it's up to either 20 million euros or 4% of global turnover, whichever is higher. And also areas which have previously not had so much focus around data protection, such as B2B, which are now under increased scrutiny. And so, Jen, I take it this is something that's important to Adestra too.
Absolutely. It's very interesting looking at these numbers compared to last year. It seems that with increased clarity and increased awareness comes some more furious action from the survey respondents in terms of making changes, reviewing current activities, realizing that maybe practices were not quite as compliant as maybe we thought they were. It's still quite worrying that 16% don't think there are changes to be made, because there almost certainly are. but this is incredibly important to not only our clients, but our own marketing practices as well, as we look to continue our use of best practice and make sure we're compliant and we're giving our clients the best possible best practice advice. One more example for you today is from the IET, and just the other day we found they were shortlisted for this program at the Membership Excellence Awards, and really they wanted to focus on what we don't find quite as exciting in email, which is often considered the basic housekeeping of our list maintenance and our engagement and permission, and really keeping that clean audit trail and moving towards that best practice work, as opposed to really fun dynamic content. But they wanted to make sure that their professional community really was re-engaged. They were going through a digital transformation process, and they wanted to filter out the unengaged contacts, improve their overall performance, and they used a program to just say, hey, are you still listening? What do you want to hear from us? Can we send you more email? What else do you want to know? And they re-engaged over 8,000 contacts, which is fantastic for a membership organization. They've increased their clicks because now they know that the data they're getting out of their program is with engaged contacts who are really looking to hear from them. So I encourage all of you, especially now that you have the added pressure of GDPR, sort of pushing on us all to make sure we are absolutely compliant and absolutely ready for the changes in legislation as they become enforceable over the next year, to really reconsider that basic housekeeping. It is best practice. I believe that GDPR, it is a burden, but it is really in the best possible light going to make, it's basically the enforcement of best practice. It's going to improve the experience of email. It's going to make the emails you send and that your subscribers agree to receive that much more resonant and that much more effective. So look at putting these programs together. Look at completing your audit trails, completing re-engagement, re-permissioning activities, and look at them as a way to really lift your results at the same time. Great.
Thanks, Jen. So on the note of team practices or the differences between individuals and teams, this is an important area within digital and also for e-consultancy. We have a report on organizational structures along with others that cover this question about how do individuals and teams work together. And so a question we've been asking in the census for 4 years now is, who is responsible for email marketing within your organization? And one of the changes that we've seen is that while email has always been an area which has tended to be more a part of someone's responsibility rather than their sole area of focus, we're seeing a movement towards email being owned by cross-functional teams. And I think this is interesting because while it's great in that it empowers more people to use email and potentially integrate it with the rest of their other marketing activity, I think there's a slight risk that because of this fact, best practice may fall by the wayside. And so I think it's just something to be aware of, that as teams start to take ownership of email, that best practice is still enforced and that the quality of email going out continues to be as high a standard as it possibly can be. And then finally, for our sort of our last slide of the day in terms of the market data, we also asked about artificial intelligence, which is obviously a hot topic given the rise of Amazon Alexa and other forms of AI that are on the marketplace and emerging. And I think with regards to AI, marketers are holding some promise across a wide range of areas. So, for example, starting with optimizing send times to optimizing calls to action. And I think this is all exciting, but it's still early days. And I think the key point to stress here is that marketers should really focus on getting the basics right. And we've seen from the data that there are still a lot of marketers who need to do that, rather than getting distracted by the shiny new thing. And a separate report on digital transformation, which was released by Capgemini a few years back, highlighted the dangers of focusing on these shiny new things rather than best practices. They call them the fashionistas, and this group of companies typically saw a drop in profitability. So I think the message to take away here is AI is exciting. There are some potentially very good applications for email marketing that will help marketers deal with time, resource, and improve list effectiveness. But we can't get taken away too much by the shiny new thing. So a bit of a word of caution. So that wraps up the data for today. So Jen, I think it's probably a good opportunity for us to take some questions from the audience.
Absolutely. Looking forward to seeing those start to come in.
Okay, so now it's time to hear my voice again as I look for questions for our very esteemed presenters. I first, as you you take the chance to type in your questions, I just want to say it's been a pleasure listening to both of you, because I found I took so much away from it, and I think there's really something in the census for everyone, regardless of what sort of responsibilities they have within the marketing team. So we have some coming in, so here we go. One from Elizabeth. Should marketers prioritize email marketing over other channels? Andrew, what do you think?
Yes, that's a great question, and I guess my answer with that is there's a case to say yes, but also no. The yes comes from the fact that it is the channel with the highest ROI. So that means that email should be prioritized when it comes to weighing up what campaigns you're going to run. That being said, the other side of the coin is that marketers really shouldn't think of channels in an isolated fashion. I remember Jen, you stressed at the beginning the importance of working in concert with other channels and other activities, and so I think email needs to be an integrated part of other approaches. And we've seen sort of other studies in the past where the return on investment is always higher when campaigns are run across multiple channels or different forms of media. Even back into sort of the pre-digital age, you can see this multiplier effect. So the short answer is yes, email should be a priority, but don't make that at the expense of not following through with an integrated approach.
Thank you for that, Andrew. Next question comes from Rob, and it relates to one of the last things you were talking about. Everyone shouted about the cookie law, and in the end, nothing really happened to companies that ignored it. Is GDPR a similar situation?
I don't think so, simply because there's already strong precedent internationally for enforcement and penalty around email activity in particular. We've seen prosecutions under CAN-SPAM. We are seeing them now under the new Canadian CASL law. We've seen even recent things under the current data protection legislation around B2C marketing. I think it's become quite well known that email legislation has teeth. I would not be surprised to see some examples made of those who flout GDPR in its early days, just to really reinforce that. So no, I don't think it'll be the same sort of, it'll be quite as weak as the cookie law has been. I think everyone is quite serious about GDPR and its ramifications. Even the penalties that have been outlined in terms of what companies can expect to be charged for infractions are fairly ominous. So it'll be interesting to see who decides to test that first, but I don't think they'll get away unscathed.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to risk it with those sort of numbers. Okay, and the next question comes from Alex. What was the most surprising change over the years that you have seen? Andrew, you've been here for just as, a lot of censuses as we have since its inception. Cool. What do you think has been the most surprising change for you?
Yeah, so I think that the most surprising change is about automation, and the reason why I've seen that is because particularly where I remember back in when I was looking through when I first started sort of dealing with the email census back in 2011, I think there was this story that we always came away with, which because email was such a good channel for ROI, a lot of marketers were still doing batch and blast, and they were still sticking with the simple tactics. And that did persist for a bit, and there are still marketers who are taking that strategy. But the change that we've seen is the rise in adoption of automation and moving away from batch and blast, which I think is a really encouraging sign. I think it's necessary because consumers are becoming more fussy with the kind of quality of emails that they receive. And also I think that because of the technology that's around, I think there are lots of exciting opportunities for automation. Particularly in thinking of different types of data. It doesn't just have to be that someone's downloaded a PDF and they get put into a normal lead cycle. I mean, on the B2C side, an interesting example I saw with Blacks was about the weather, which is where they make targets during rainy days. And I think, Jen, you sort of mentioned Costa as another example of that.
Yeah, we've worked on some emails with them where they have creative queued up for, the sort of blended drinks on hot days or warm drinks on cold days, and they combine that with sending out the points that you have on your Costa card, so you know if that hot or cold drink is going to be free or if it's going to generate you some more points towards your free drink. Their customers really start to get a bit angry if that points count is not accurate. So again, that's the case for consumers really expecting that personalized experience and expecting it to work properly. So they've invested in making sure that that all comes through correctly. They tend to send the emails when they know it's coffee time, which is a fairly, if you're lucky enough to be in a business that has those kind of very definitive daytime cycles, it's quite a good thing to do. Is if it's 11 and it's time to go get a coffee, get your email out and remind people to come to Costa for a drink depending on the weather that may or may not be free depending on your points.
Thanks for that, Jen. And I guess related to that point of making sure your data displays correctly, and to the earlier point you're making about first-person marketing and how we should all connect the dots, Emma's asking, how are marketers integrating email with other channels?
Gosh, so many ways, really. I think the biggest thing is the email address is your unique identifier. So that's your opportunity to really look at a person as an individual and send them what you know they want based on all the data you've collected about them. So it's not a display channel in terms of batch and blast. You're not pushing it out onto social where you're never really sure if someone's going to see it or who. You're not buying ads on a billboard or just on an ad network where it kind of displays based on a fairly generic audience. What you want to do is make sure your email address is identifying an individual person and you're using all the data that you've gathered about them from the interactions they have with you, whether or not they're a customer, whether or not they've made a purchase or made an inquiry, or if you're appending third-party data, which is becoming more and more prevalent, what other types of activities are they doing? What email data do you have about them? Making sure that all of those are coming into a centralized place and that they're very usable. So it's really, it's hard to give a specific example because everyone's stack is going to look very different, but it's really taking that customer-focused approach, thinking about all of the interactions that your subscribers are taking and how can you leverage the fact that you know who they are as an individual to give them that personalized, really intimate feeling experience.
And I think we have time for one last question, but do continue submitting because we can follow up with you afterwards, so don't worry. So this one comes from Karen. What types of personalization should I focus on? So we saw, when you were presenting the results of the census, that many marketers are still in the early stages. There's a lot of growth in the very advanced stages. So what do you start with?
Gosh, I think it depends on the type of business you are and the type of subscriber you have, but start with what you've got. What do you know about those subscribers? And then if you haven't really got anything, then start with a plan to get more information. So one of our customers, Pets Pajamas, developed a loyalty program. So they do merchandise for dogs, like collars and fancy jackets and things for pampered pooches. And they started a loyalty program that asked their customers, what type of animal do you have? You know, big dog, small dog, and then started sending breed-specific conditional content to them. So if you had a Jack Russell Terrier, you'd get an email that said, here's stuff for your Jack Russell Terrier, and it was actually products that were sized to fit a Jack Russell Terrier as opposed to, you know, a Golden Retriever or something like that. So use the information you have. If you don't have that, ask your subscribers to provide information that relates back to the relationship you have with them. And the other thing you can do is, again, look to third-party sources if that's something that makes sense for your business to append your data and make a more personalized experience where you haven't already.
Okay, I think that's really all we had time for today. Thank you very much to all of those who joined us online. If you're listening to the recording, please do send us questions at marketing@Adestra, and we'll be very happy to answer your questions. As I said before, we'll be sending a follow-up email with the recording slides and a link to the census. So there's so much more juicy goodness in it. So please do download and read the census. Thank you very much to Jen and Andrew who joined us on the session today. It's been very informative, as I'm sure our audience agrees.
Right. Well, thanks, Anka, and thanks, Andrew. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks all.